So, welcome everyone. Nick Wagner, Sr. Welcome to another episode of the Full Potential Podcast. I'm super excited to be with Liz Capants tonight. Liz, you are actually my first guest in season 4. So, you're helping me kick off season 4 of the podcast. So, I really appreciate that. I took off last week for the holidays, and we're starting the new year with, I think, what is going to be a great conversation. So, welcome to the Full Potential Podcast, Liz, and thank you for making time.
Great. Thanks for having me, Nick.
I'm super excited to dive into your career journey and talk all about what it means to be an entrepreneur, and you own your own business, but what it's like, especially to be an entrepreneur in the field of talent and recruiting during COVID, which I think is going to be a very interesting conversation. And I always love interviewing successful entrepreneurs and CEOs, because I think every single small business owner that I talk to, Liz, has like a different story and has different experiences to share that I think so many of my guests can learn from. So I'm excited for everyone to kind of hear from you tonight as we go through your journey.
Excellent. Thanks again. Great to be here.
So I always start, Liz, with for people to get a better sense of who you are, right? So who is Liz? I like to ask the question, when you would meet someone in a networking event pre-COVID, when we actually saw people in person, right? And we were going to networking events or maybe going to conferences and things like that. And you met someone for the first time and they were like, "Oh, you're Liz." And like, how did you introduce yourself? What did you tell them that you did, or what you did for work? How did you explain that?
Yep. Just introduce myself and explain I do search, networking, and recruiting. And then most important in those situations is to ask the other person, about themselves and learn about them, first. So, yeah.
So we have a lot of different listeners with a lot of different backgrounds, Liz. Your website, which we'll link to in the show description, EBC Associates, you say that you're an executive search and recruitment firm. So before we dive into your career and how you ended up owning this firm and starting this firm, can you share a little bit with the audience, like what is executive search and recruitment? Just because for those that are not in HR, like the two of us, they might not know what that means.
Yep. So I will work both with companies and candidates. On the company side, mostly it's the mid-market that I will support and help to identify and strategize on upcoming hires that they're looking to fill. And then decide if work with them basically on a consulting basis to decide if it's actually something that they want to outsource to a firm. My firm is a third party recruiter. Oftentimes, for those that don't know the structure, there's in-house recruiters as well as HR to help with that talent acquisition. So, I come into that picture when they need the extra bandwidth, or maybe it's a hard to fill position. And then I will execute and work on that search. The other side of my business, I will work with the candidates on job search. A lot of people right now, especially with this past year, have been in transition or looking to get into a new industry. So I'll work with the candidate side also. So it's both sides.
Very interesting. And I know we'll dive more into that, Liz, but I wanted you to just kind of share like that brief overview, because I think that'll help people kind of get a sense of who you are and what you do. And you have such a passion for helping people find that great job and find that great career path, which we'll definitely talk about as well. So let's go back to when you were little, Liz, because I like to always start at the beginning. Was your dream as like a 7 or 8 year old kid to own your own executive search and recruiting firm, or did you have other plans when you were a little kid?
Great question. So no, I love to write. I studied journalism and mass communications, and I wanted to be a journalist. But I also wanted to be somebody who conducts a lot of interviews and is interviewing people as part of that, either a reporter or something in the journalism realm. So I started with that, out on that, and then fell into this later in my career.
And I think just to follow up on that, you actually went to school for what that dream was, right? You went to college to work in the field of communication and journalism.
Correct. Yes.
So that was the plan.
Yes, that was the plan. Loved what I studied, loved what I was doing. And then my first job was in marketing. So I took a detour from the journalism, but always wanted to be in that communications and journalistic realm. So.
Well, it's interesting that, and based off of what you do now, you mentioned, journalism has a lot of interviewing and getting to know people, and your business today does as well. So there's, you might not have gone to school for what you're doing today, but I think a lot of what you learned in school and some of those other jobs obviously apply to what you do in your current role, owning your own company. What I want to ask this because we have a lot of early career professionals that listen to the podcast. How did you make that decision to actually not go into journalism, right? And go that route and go into marketing? Because I think that's a very common thing, Liz, where people will go to school for 4 years, and today, right, they'll spend upwards of, it could be over $100,000 to go to school these days for a 4-year college degree, and then realize they actually don't want to use that degree for their job, right? How did you make that decision, and how did that work out?
Yeah, great question. I started, my first job was as a marketing assistant. And I was also, interested in that. Marketing and sales was always another part of what I was interested in as a career. And so I had an opportunity I actually worked in London for a marketing firm, and it was a good first step into the work world. While it wasn't directly a journalistic or reporter or within that realm, it was something that I had this gut feeling. I felt like it was the right thing to start with. And so I went in that direction, and then moved into more of a sales business development capacity. But that was definitely the right path for me at the time. So
what was you bring up a really cool experience that I don't think I realized you had. What was it like as an American to go work in London, and how do you think that helped shape you as an individual throughout your career?
Yeah. So at the time, Nick, my parents were living in London, and so I was back there and wanted to spend a year or two in London. So it worked out that this opportunity came about. It felt like it was the right next step, and so I ended up starting in this marketing assistant role, but learned a lot. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting is you mentioned how you did marketing, then you did business development and sales. And for those that are not entrepreneurs that are watching or listening, all of those are really, really important when you own your own business, right? Because at the end of the day, no matter what your business is, you're ultimately selling whatever that product or service is. So those experiences, which were at the beginning of your career, I'm assuming it probably helped you quite a bit as the CEO of your own company.
Yes, absolutely. In my professional life, as well as, Nick, I want to point out to everyone is also experiences in your personal life that can be parlayed into your professional life. That's also an important, whether it's a volunteer activity or you're part of an organization. All of those experiences contribute to your professional life, whether you're running your business or the type of career that you choose, if it's earlier on in your career journey. So they all sort of play into that ultimate role that finds you and you find what that is.
I think that's a great point, and I always, it's interesting. I didn't do a lot of like philanthropic work and volunteering in my 20s. I've turned that around in my 30s and had to do a lot more. But I completely agree with you. I think I've had some absolutely amazing experiences, things like what I'm doing now, which is not part of my job, and how I get to meet amazing people and give back to the community. So I think that's a great point, that no matter where you are in your career, the opportunity to volunteer and do philanthropic work are a great way to kind of, bring new things to life that you maybe didn't even realize you had a chance to do. So yep. I want to talk about, you had all these great experiences early on in your career, but I think this is a really important point in your journey. You actually took a break for about 10 years to be with your family and your kids, and didn't work. And I know that can be not only like obviously a really amazing time, to be home with your family. I think for a lot of people, whether you're a man or a woman, it can be a very challenging time, right? To kind of put your career on pause and decide not to work to be with your family. So I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit about like what was that like as you know, as a spouse, as a mom, as you know, like a professional. Like how did you make that decision? And I think for a lot of people out there, you know, did you think it was the right decision?
Yeah, great question. It was not an easy decision, and I did struggle with the decision, not only when I first made it, but throughout the years. But in essence, kind of what I was saying before, some of these personal experiences outside of your core job, actually can translate very well into a new position or a career change or a pivot. It certainly was a busy time. Did a lot of volunteering. I did some part-time interim project work, but I was not in a full-time, permanent role. But it was not easy. It was many times I, was sort of second guessing it, and to be truth be told, was very much looking to be back in the world of work and have that nice, I guess, work-life balance. I think we have to be productive. It's important to be productive in your career. So it was not an easy choice.
It's interesting because I actually think doing that is probably the hardest job you can actually do. I often joke with family and friends that when I'm on vacation or I take time off and I'm home with the kids all day, like they're exhausting. Like I have three of them and they're exhausting. So I actually think for parents that do get that opportunity to stay home, I always give them kudos because I think it's such an awesome thing to do. Now,
Yeah.
on the flip side, I also have heard, just like you said, a lot of people, they almost feel like they're missing out by not working. And not having that full-time position that they had before kids. Tell me though, because I think you're in a really unique situation. And I think I would love it if more people kind of followed in your footsteps. You didn't decide after you took time off to go back to like what you had known previously. You actually started a business when you returned to the workforce, which I think is a really cool like kind of transition back into the workforce. So I'd love to kind of understand like how did you come up with the idea of EBC Associates, which you've now done for 14 years?
Yeah.
And did you do a lot of work ahead of launching that while you were home with your family to kind of get ready for that moment?
Yeah, so I was Nick. I worked for another. I was at a point where I was looking to get back into the workforce, and a friend of mine was in recruiting, and I thought to myself, well, I could do that. I know a lot of people. I've got sales. I've got a marketing background. So I actually worked for another firm and did my training and learned the foundation of the process in the business. And then I had a partner to start out with when it was end of 2007 when we decided that, hey, we can do things a little bit better. Let's do our own thing. So I actually had a couple of years of training with another firm before I launched this practice. Yeah.
And how was I didn't realize that, so my apologies. How was that? You mentioned the decision to stay home with your family was a big one. What was that like to leave the company that you had been working with, right? Learning how to be a recruiter to go start your own firm. How did that happen?
Yeah. We thought a partner at the time, we thought that we could do things a little different, a little better. We wanted to try our own thing. There were some things that we didn't. We thought could have been done a better way. So we thought, let's try it. Nick, we got things set up. It was, right before the downturn of 2008 and 9.
Right.
And so when I did have a partner at the time, and then when we hit the downturn, she actually left because she needed a more steady income, and no one was hiring back then, if you remember. And I said to myself at that point, I said to myself, I don't think I can do this solo. I don't know enough. I certainly don't have enough experience. And because I had this partner to start with, it was doable. But when she left, I was like, okay, I really can't do this. And then it was that summer, and I didn't have a plan B because I absolutely love the business. And by some miracle, 2 clients reached out to me that summer, gave me some work. And I thought, you know what, let me give it a shot. And here I am. So
that is real. So that is really like, I'm obviously you're probably glad you stuck with it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously because it's obviously super successful 14 years later. I think that's a really great kind of a great story, Liz, and I'm glad you shared that because I think a lot of people like your partner, right? And it's no fault of theirs. They decided, you know what, this isn't for me. I need
Right.
to do something different, and they kind of went in that direction. But you
Right.
stuck with it, and I think that obviously took some courage to stick with it because the easy thing probably would have been to go get a job, but then you wouldn't be here today with your own, with your own successful company, helping, who knows how many people find jobs over the past 14 years. So I love that.
Thank-
What what did that moment teach you? Like what did you when your partner left?
Yeah.
It's obviously, for those listening, I mean, it was the Great Recession, right? So it was probably one of the worst economic downturns in the history of the United States. What did you learn from that? I mean,
Yeah, it was a really defining moment because I was very when she left and understood totally the reasons behind it, that the economy was terrible. We were just starting out. We were getting things up and running. Nobody was hiring. And then, like I said, I absolutely love the business. So I didn't really have a plan B. And when this client, two clients reached out and gave me some work, I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. I worked 24/7. Was nervous starting out, just being a solo, business owner, and didn't think I knew enough. I felt like I certainly don't know enough. So there was that sort of nervousness. But as I stuck with it and just continued on and kept going, it got easier.
yeah, I mean,
So
I think it's sometimes that self doubt creeps in,
yeah.
and it actually, in a lot of times, that would have been enough self doubt where people would have given up, but you persevered through, which I think is great. So it's been, you said it was the 2006-2007 timeframe when you started the business. It's obviously probably changed quite a bit, and you probably experienced a lot of amazing things, and throughout the time you've owned the business. As an entrepreneur, what if you were to share with my audience, like what's one of like the most proud moments you've had being an entrepreneur and owning your company, and what's been one of the most challenging moments besides the one that you just shared?
Mm. Yeah, I think the proudest moment for me, Nick, was really sticking with and never giving up on the business and just working really hard and staying focused and staying motivated, which, as you probably know, is not easy. But I'm very proud of the fact that I'm very disciplined. So I know I have a vision for the business, and I just staying focused and working hard. I'm now looking back, I am very proud of that part of it. And I'm sorry, the second part of the question was what was your second part of the
Yeah, what like biggest like probably thing that scared you, or the biggest, like maybe not necessarily a mistake, but like biggest thing that maybe didn't go the way you had planned.
Yes, I would say that 2008, 9, and 10, as we were coming out of that recession there, I made the mistake of really just sticking with a very small handful of clients. And I didn't really diversify. And at that point, I wasn't networking as much as I am today. And so I think I made the mistake of just putting all my eggs in one basket and sticking with those and not knowing that I had to really diversify to keep the business going.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And I think for those listening and watching, as an entrepreneur, you're always learning, right? Because many of the things you've never experienced before or never done before. And to your point, you didn't have a partner at this point. You were on your own. So it's really you kind of learn as you go. You talk to other people who've been through it and you learn from them. But you're obviously, some things are going to go well and some things aren't. So you're gonna live through different experiences as an entrepreneur. That's for sure. Looking back, so you made it through the Great Recession, which was a very difficult time. We are now dealing with COVID, right? Which is it's different from the Great Recession, but there's probably some similarities at the same time. What has it been like over the past, we'll say 9-10 months, as a small business owner, as someone in the recruiting and the executive search space? How has it changed because of COVID?
Yeah, I think most people, or more people, I should say, Nick, are really looking to connect more and to network more, even if you're not proactively looking for another job.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
Most people I've found we've been extremely busy this past year, and I think a big part of that is even though we're not as connected face to face as we were previously, I think in many ways we're even more connected through Zoom, through technology. People that maybe thought that their job was secure, their job was guaranteed. I think this past year has really shown us that there really are no guarantees,
Yeah.
and it's important to keep the door open a little bit and know what's going on in the market. So I think that interest to connect and to have your pulse on the market has really significantly increased for our business, for me.
So to kind of translate that, so
Yeah.
people are being more proactive. So
Yes.
they have full-time jobs, but they're being proactive, looking for maybe that next opportunity, even though they might be happy in their current job. They want to maybe expand their network, realize what is out there. So if something does happen to their current job, they're ready to find that next one.
Exactly. There's more of that, even if they hate that word network and think of it as which some people do, it might have a somewhat of a negative connotation, or maybe they had a bad experience with some type of networking at some point. I think there's much more of that human connectivity and wanting to have that connection.
So
So,
let's talk about that because, and if you haven't followed Liz on LinkedIn, go follow her. She is maxed out at her number of connections, so she can't connect with you, but you can follow her. So let's talk about networking, Liz, because I think that's something that you mentioned. A lot of people, I think, actually are kind of turned off by that word. I I try to explain to people that networking is just sometimes as simple as just having a conversation for a few minutes with someone, right? It doesn't have to be like this big formal thing where you set up a meeting and you get dressed up, right? It can be very casual. But let's talk about networking, and I'd love it. You're obviously an expert in this space. Why is networking so important for people in general either looking for a job when they already have one or looking for a job when they don't have one? Why is networking that critical step in the job search process?
Yep, great question. And to your point, Nick, it doesn't have to be a super formal type of situation, but it's really important to know what's happening in the market. Really, because there aren't any guarantees. There was a recent article put out by Forbes magazine, and the topic, which was so on point, was just about how there's just not much loyalty from companies to their employees, and we have to look out for ourselves. Ultimately, we have to keep the door open and keep these connections going. So whether it's proactively searching, or you're happy but you just want to again know what's going on out there, it's really important to network for those reasons.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, and I always say this to folks. You don't network the day you need a job. You network years before you need a job.
Yeah.
Because once you need a job, you're almost like your urgency changes completely. And if you can network ahead of that, then it'll make that process a lot easier. I want to ask you. You mentioned Zoom and you mentioned technology. Obviously, many of us are not meeting in person. What are some of your recommendations for people on how to network? Right. So obviously, you seem to be a LinkedIn ninja because you have maxed out at 30,000 connections. What are some of your favorite ways that you recommend people to network?
Yeah. So there's many different types of groups out there. It might be an alumni association, right? It might be something that is related to a nonprofit or a charity that you're interested in. So there's so many different types of networking groups that are out there, associations. Some are industry specific, but I would always recommend going and trying them and visiting them and finding which one just it is, you find that connection with those people, and you'll know what that is. So I would recommend going and
You'll get that vibe, right?
you'll get the vibe, yeah, and I say this, Nick, even to people that have had not so great experience. I say, well, that was one incident. Go and look at some of the others and visit, and you'll find what's right for you, because they're all very different. So
yeah, and I think one thing, Liz, you bring up a couple good points, but one thing, I think a lot of people are afraid that they'll ask someone to network and that person will say no. And I always try to explain to people, like, yeah, that is going to happen sometimes, and that's okay, right? Because most people will have no problem networking. We got connected through a mutual friend, right?
yep.
And we reached out, we had a phone call. I think a lot of people are afraid that they're going to be like, they don't want to waste a person's time or whatever they have in their head on why the person wouldn't want to meet with them, right?
Right.
And the reality is most people love talking and meeting other people, especially when someone's like, hey, can you tell me about your career? Most people love sharing about their career. So I think more often than not, people are actually happy to network with people. So I think I wanted to share that. But I can't stress this point enough that you just brought up. The whole idea of networking through your volunteer and your philanthropic work, right? I mean, volunteering in a nonprofit or being on the board of a nonprofit, you're giving back and you're getting to meet other great people, right? And you never know what might come of meeting those great people.
Exactly. And have when you were saying, Nick, yeah, most people do like to help and to share their story and their career journey. Make sure you have you've done the research on that person or whoever that is, so that you know how to position and present yourself, especially if it might be what's very common now is and was even pre-pandemic, but the informational interview. If you're looking for that career pivot, or if you're just starting out, do your homework on that person and have some well thought out questions, because people ultimately love talking about themselves. And when you take the time to do that, it makes such a difference, and they're more than willing, like you said, to help you. So
yeah, no, that's definitely been my experience. I've gotten a chance. I mean, this podcast, I always share with people. This is how I network every Sunday night with a new guest, right? And it's amazing how many people that have come on my show, like yourself, shared your career journey to help others, that before I was introduced to you or before I reached out to you, I didn't even know that individual, right? So I think people really do want to help. I think especially now with everything that's going on with COVID, I think people are even more willing to help and give back to those that may be in need. I want to pivot back to you as an entrepreneur. So you've been a successful entrepreneur now for about 15 years, 14, 15 years. A lot of people that have lost their jobs during COVID that I've talked to, I always bring up to them, Liz, well, have you thought about being an entrepreneur? Have you thought about starting your own business? And I ask people that, and they kind of look at me, or they say, no, I've never thought of that before. Like, I couldn't do that, right? And I often hear people say that they couldn't do that, or they don't see themselves being an entrepreneur. What's some advice that you would give to those individuals that might be thinking about being an entrepreneur but are afraid to take that next step?
Yeah, great question. So number one, I would strongly recommend doing the market research on whatever your background or your business or your interests might be. But number two, super important, Nick, is when you're starting out, this goes back to the whole networking piece, is to build a network of other entrepreneurs that you can, connect with regularly, monthly, every other week, whatever it might be, because this way you're part of a team and you're not totally solo. And having that support and that network is really critical. And it also can build up some great referrals, depending on what your business, is doing. But I would suggest doing the market research, knowing that it might be 6 months to a year maybe before you generate revenue, depending again on what you do. There's so many pieces that go into that business, but it's doable. It is doable, and then of course having the network is really critical.
Yeah, and I always share that with people, because I think being an entrepreneur, I think with the way technology is today, and your access to individuals and people and data and information and markets with the internet. it's changed quite a bit, since you and I went to college. So I always share that because I think there's so much opportunity with people to be an entrepreneur. To your point, if you do the research and find that need, your product or service could fill that need. So I think that's great advice. So last thing, Liz, I always end with the same question. So first, thank you again for being on the show. Great advice for everyone listening about, from learning about your career, as well as obviously the wealth of knowledge you have. We talked before the show. We could probably talk 2 hours about career advice, tips for people looking for jobs, right?
Yeah.
But I always close with the same question. So I asked you to come on because I think you've had a really successful and unique career journey. And I always ask my guests, what has helped you reach your full potential in your career? So what is that one thing, Liz, that you think has made you successful, whether it was, when you got out of college and you were doing marketing and you were doing sales, whether it was during your time when you stayed home with your family and did volunteer work, or now your time as an entrepreneur. What's that one thing that's made you so successful?
Yeah, if I had to say one thing, Nick, I would say be your authentic self. Be yourself in your business, in your life, in what you do, because ultimately people are going to work with people that they know and who they can see the authentic person behind the business. And really, when you connect with people on that level, is where you'll get the results. But just be your authentic self, and to also secondly, I would say is to not be afraid that you don't know everything, because I certainly didn't know everything.
Well, none of us do, right?
And had a lot of questions, and then I just went for it. So don't be afraid that you don't know everything if you are thinking of starting a business, and really just go for it, right? I think
the authentic self piece is a really interesting topic, Liz, and we could probably do a whole podcast just on that, because I think it's interesting in the age of social media, your authentic self is not always what it might seem to be, right? So I think you bring up a great point that I think the people that are going to be successful connecting with people are those people that actually portray who they really are on social media and in real life, not a different version of themselves in real life versus social media. So I think what you're saying for those people out there that are thinking what I'm thinking, I think that's just great, so relevant in today's society.
Yeah, 100%. Because people ultimately know, they can assess someone and who they really are. It's, it comes through. And I know just by doing, research on company or people myself, you get to know is someone's authentic self and who they really are. So just being true to yourself and staying focused, working hard is my advice.
And that's so important. I mean, especially for your clients, right? If you're going to a job interview, you really want to be your authentic self, because you want that company to hire you for who you are, not for someone who you're pretending to be, because it's going to be pretty exhausting pretending to be someone at work every day. If it's just not going to end well.
Yep. And just one other final point, Nick, is that's where the hire is always made on the person behind the piece of paper, behind the resume. Who is this person connecting with the hiring manager? If you're a job seeker, and vice versa, or if you're starting a business, is connecting on that human level, right? That's where the synergy is always found and the hire is made. So.
Coming from an expert, that is well said, Liz. So thank you. So again, Liz, thank you for helping me kick off season 4 of the Full Potential Podcast. We take the video that we recorded tonight, it goes out on YouTube, so everyone can watch us on YouTube if they missed it tonight. And then we take this audio, we put it into our all the major podcast platforms, including Apple and Google and Spotify. So everyone will be able to hear your show, Liz. And again, we'll make sure to connect everyone with your LinkedIn profile. So if people want to connect with you on LinkedIn, they'll find that URL in the show description, as well as your website for your business as well. If they want to connect with your firm, if they have any talent needs, or if they want to connect with you as a candidate as well. So thank you for making time. I know this is a very busy time for you. I thought this would be a great way to kick off the new year with a professional like yourself on the show.
Great. Thanks so much again, Nick. It was great to be here, and I look forward to speaking with you and seeing you probably see you on LinkedIn. I'm sure.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
Thank you, Liz. Stay safe and be well. Okay. Happy 2021.
Happy 2021. Thank you, Nick. Take
Thank
care.
you.